The NFL, their breakout was in the 60s.
Yeah.
They harnessed television. Our breakout was in 2019, harnessing social media.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is timing meets
Yeah.
tech, but the core principles are always the same when it comes to good storytelling.
I love seeing lacrosse get bigger too. I played from 4th grade to the end of high school, and like such a great game.
I love that. Where'd
Yeah.
you play? Did you grow up here?
I played in San Francisco, grew up there at a private school, town school, and then went to CATE in Santa Barbara and played there. And then we played kind of, even though we were smaller, we played all the schools in kind of like the Southern California area.
Yeah. I mean, lacrosse is more akin to hockey and golf in America in that it's a stickball sport. It requires equipment, therefore it's expensive. The beauty in sport is that it is ultimately you know equal, and it is egalitarian only if anyone and essentially everyone can play. So once you introduce a barrier to enter,
right,
sort of cuts away at the egalitarianism of it. The only sport that I've left out is American football that worked through former presidents like Teddy Roosevelt and the government and municipalities to fund rec peewee football. So if anyone grew up playing football, they got their pads for free and they had a tournament at the end of the season. But football's fucking expensive.
Yeah.
Those helmets are more expensive than lacrosse helmets. If we had to all pay for our pads before we played football, no one would be fucking playing. And so football figured it out. We look at public and private financing and resourcing at the high school and below level. We don't have to pay for green fees or ice time like golf and hockey.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of, how do we get the game? You triggered me to have that thought more played out west in the Bay and LA. We moved our headquarters here, try to establish more understanding and recognition and hype around this game that was once a Northeast game exclusively.
For sure. Yeah, we had one of our PE teachers kind of pioneered it and just brought it out to like, we would do lacrosse camps and all that from starting at 4th grade. And like, it really did kind of have this resurgence all around the Bay Area, which was great.
I mean, PE is so important. Being able to buy a stick at Walmart or Target and go to the beach and not have to worry about like, oh, I just made a $50 investment. You can pick it up for $10. That's what we do when we play Frisbee or bring a squishy football or paddle ball out to the beach.
Right.
Think about that being so underrated for sport adoption at the competitive level. And then stuff that you guys do for a living. I to this day still think Mighty Ducks had a greater impact on the NHL in the 90s and 2000s than anything that the NHL did.
That's pretty true, yeah. I mean, anybody that never even watched hockey or anything has seen that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still to this day probably the composition of the most diverse hockey team that ever stepped on ice.
Yeah.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, and there were so many human stories in that. And what those kids did was play hockey. What Gordon Bombay did was play hockey and coach hockey.
Yeah.
Cool running. Same thing. If there was pro bobsledding, I would have been in America at the time. And then you have Rudy and Field of Dreams and Remember the Titans.
Love Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
We did our favorite sports films, like top 20 sports films or something of all time.
Yeah,
we did a fun episode about that. It was just cool to like reminisce overall, kind of like our childhood favorites and go through that.
What was number one for you guys?
We had, was it Rocky?
Rocky.
Yeah.
I think it was Rocky.
Yeah. There's definitely a solid amount on that list. That was fun.
Friday Night Lights is probably
Friday
up
Nights,
there.
That was up there.
Shout out Pete Berg, who's in the area.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the power of media, I mean, it's undeniable. And I think, we look at like the movie theater audience and kind of having a down year the last year or two, less films coming out, less television is coming out this year. Instead of 600 shows, they're doing 300 shows. But consumption is still going up. Like you said, it's just different areas. And we got to figure out how to harness that. Have you found in your businesses and your endeavors, like media is something that has really kind of helped the formation and guided the strategy?
100%. Always has in sports. I have some more to say about film and television, which I think it's actually more about protecting the art and really good storytelling, going back to our point, than it is around consumption because it's really like, post Parasite, now we're actually seeing real box numbers of consumption of international features. I love foreign films, but they just didn't really make their way through the academies before. Like Victoria was the year before Parasite. Is my favorite film. German made film, single camera operator, single shot all the way through, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Fucking outstanding. If you haven't seen it, you can watch it on Amazon.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And then, you watch all the, like Another Round that came out in 2020, won the Palme d'Or. And I think we have to protect that. And we have to be very weary of, valuing young creators and their style of communication. Going back to Steve Jobs, he was always, to me, a creative and business leader because he equally listened to what his customers want and also had the courage to say, this is what we believe you should be doing, and this is how you should be appreciating laptops and mobile devices. And yes, it's more expensive, but trust us on this. It's incumbent on storytellers and studios to protect that. On the sports side, there's been, I'll give you a few examples. There's been a big sort of swirl of conversation in journalistic sports around Drive to Survive and the impact that had on F1 in America. Drive to Survive wasn't novel. Hard Knocks has been doing it with the NFL and HBO. There was reality programming that uplifted Dana White and the Fertitta brothers in UFC called The Ultimate Fighter. They were $40 million in the hole. They did a time buy and paid to produce that reality show that they still have today.
It's a really good point.
Unscripted is a crucial part of storytelling, getting into the humanity of the players so that you can have a deeper connection and care more in the bottom of the fourth quarter, the bottom of the ninth inning when the game's on the line, and that player who now his backstory is taking that game-winning shot. And then we already talked about scripted, which I think scripted is going to have a comeback right now because there's been this tilt of like, oh, everyone wants their Drive to Survive, and then they're rushing to produce it. Streamers had a lower supply than there was a demand. Now I think there's probably more supply. I mean, there's a Man City doc on Netflix, and Man City is one of the biggest, most exciting teams in the world.
Yeah.
And like no one's fucking watching it.
I want to check that out. I haven't even. Yeah.
And it's and then there's a cut of who the showrunner is, who the director is. That's really important. Yeah. I love Last Chance U because of Greg Whiteley. I think he tells stories better than anyone else. So like getting into that is arguably more important than getting into the space, like how the story is being executed. And that we found is our largest driver for metrics growth year over year, whether it's tickets or merchandise or sponsorship or youth.
I mean, that's such like a 360 view of everything, right? I mean, it's also like pretty representative of like everything you're involved in too, from the entrepreneurial side to the sports side and media side. That's really fascinating. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.